Boo! Just kidding. It's just me. Did I scare you? Okay, let's get past this dumb intro. This bit's over. Hello and welcome back to How Bored. I am Christian and I will be your host for today. And we are finally here. We're talking about board games and actually reviewing them. I know, it's about time. I've been taking forever on this, and I just finally got to the point where I said, let's just make it happen. So, in this series, I am actually going to be talking not only about my review for Final Girl, but I'm going to be doing a how-to-play video as well as a playthrough for you. And now, this review and how to play is just going to be about the core box of Final Girl, as this is not a standalone game. You get this one, and then you also need a feature film at least to be able to play. And, of course, we'll dive more into that later on down the video. And when it comes to the playthrough of it and a little bit of the how to play, I'm going to be basing it off of A Knock at the Door, which is a feature film that is based on The Strangers. I'm picking this one specifically because it's the first one that got me into this system. I love the theme of The Strangers, and this is honestly also the simplest feature film box that I have, so it's going to be the easiest one for me to teach. So again, all of those other videos are going to be based around this. Today, we are mostly just going to be talking about the core box. I might dive into some experiences I've had with other feature films. But for the most part, we're just going to be talking about my thoughts on Final Girl as a whole. So, to give you a brief overview of Final Girl, what this means, this title here, Final Girl, if you're not a horror film buff, that refers to the last one alive in a horror film. It's typically a girl, hence the term Final Girl. Everyone else in the movie has died. It's the last girl that's still running away from the killer and typically has a final showdown. Now, this mostly refers to slasher films, but they do actually incorporate some other styles in here that are not just slashers, and I actually really do appreciate that. You've got stuff ranging all the way from, again, Strangers, all the way up to, like, Alien and The Thing, and it's actually really cool. So, again, just mostly talking about the core system of this game. In Final Girl, you are taking on the role of a different Final Girl from different feature films, facing off against different killers from different feature films in different locations from feature films. I'm going to say feature films so many times in this video, so hopefully you get used to it now. In your role as Final Girl, you are going to be not only trying to save victims, but also yourself by eliminating the killer. The ultimate win condition for most feature film boxes is just defeating the killer. You can go games without saving any victims at all, but of course saving victims are what's going to help you actually deal with the killer. And if you let the killer take out a lot of victims, then you're just going to end up being punished for it. I'm not going to get too much into the nitty-gritty of the how to play and the overview of this game. Just basically, overall, as a Final Girl, you're going to be using cards and then rolling dice to see how successful you are with those cards. And those cards are going to present different actions, like moving or searching through an item deck to try to find a weapon or some useful item to help you out in that scenario. You're going to be reducing horror, which is a big mechanic to the game, maybe trying to gain some time, things like that. There's a lot of different things to balance in here, and it's kind of an interesting, almost economic type of system. You get like an income every round, and you're trying to figure out how best to use it, is how I would describe it. If you want to look at it from a non-thematic standpoint, that is kind of like the core crux of the game, is you really want to manipulate the resources at your disposal as best you can. To eventually take out this killer. Now, you're also at the behest of dice rolls, which is something I am notoriously not good with. My dice rolls are terrible, and I've never been a big fan of luck-based gaming. I'm okay with a game having a little bit of luck. There's some times where it's fun, like Wax of Quedlinburg doing the bag-pulling style until you bust type of thing is kind of interesting sometimes. But I'm typically, when it comes to luck in board games, I'm not the biggest fan. Which is why, when I say that I freaking love this game, it is actually very impressive. Now, for those that don't know, I am a huge horror movie buff. I was pretty much raised on horror movies. No fault to my parents. I was probably closer to 10 years old at the time, and I started going down the rabbit hole. My friend was basically making me watch a lot of horror movies, and I just ended up falling in love with it. And I'm at the point now where a lot of horror movies don't scare me, but I just enjoy them for the ride. But I'm still just a huge fan in all, like, overall in horror as a genre for both movies and books and television. I actually have like a whole slew of horror books and movies right here behind me on the set down in these cubes here. I'm a big horror fan. So when I tell you that I get to take on the role as a final girl and face down against a killer, oh boy, this is one of those experiences where I actually care about the theme. There's a lot of games that I really just enjoy the gameplay of, and the theme is a nice little bonus. This is a game I absolutely actively love because of its theming. And again, you can switch up the theming. You can go one day from Strangers to Alien, and then it's just like, whoa, I'm in way different universes. What's more, on top of that, you can mix and match the feature films. If I want to have the Strangers out on the ship in Alien in space, what is even happening right now? You can create the strangest scenarios with Final Girl. They're all unique. They're all interesting. Every feature film introduces unique mechanics, but still stays true to the game at its core. It hardly ever manipulates the core rules of the game. It simply just adds on to them. And it's all different. Like, every different feature film, as far as I've experienced so far, feels very unique to one another. Like, for example, in The Strangers, there's 3 killers that you're facing off against instead of just 1. Most feature film boxes only have 1 killer and maybe some minions. This is actively 3 different killers that you're trying to take out. Conversely, the other one that I've been referencing a lot, Alien, which is, I actually don't remember the name of the box up the top of my head. I think it's Into the Void is what that one's called. That one, the killer will just disappear. It starts off as a baby, and it's active, and it does a lot of damage. But once it kills somebody and it feeds, it grows up, and then it just disappears, and it'll randomly ambush you, and it's terrifying. Another thing that I really like about this game is how swingy and undeterministic it is. You never know which way a game is going to go at the start. I've had times where I have just gone and absolutely slaughtered the killers before they had a chance to really do anything. That was actually a knock at the door. I did that. I got a disemboweler, which was a knife pounded through the top of a wooden bat, and it did a lot of damage. It did a lot of mean things to those killers, and yeah, they didn't live for very long, that game. But also recently, I played a newer feature film that I picked up, and I died in the first 3 rounds. So any given game, you have no idea. Like, it says on each box, I believe, it will literally say 20 to 60 minutes, because the game could actually be over in 20 minutes. Like, it is very possible for that to happen, and a lot of the times when that happens, it's because the player got greedy, and the player in this case being me. That game that I died in 3 rounds, I got very greedy. I have since gone back and tried to play that feature film 2 more times, and I died both times. Like, I had no chance against the killer because I was getting too greedy and trying to play too aggressively. And I was a grandma, so maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. But, you know, you live and you learn. Or in this case, I guess you die and then you can't learn because, well, you're dead. So that's my excuse for why I keep dying in that game. But it is overall a very humbling experience. When I first started playing Final Girl, I was still pretty early on in my time with the hobby, and I was focusing very hard on strict strategy games that relied very little on luck. Like, at most, your luck was, I hope the type of token I need gets put out into the display, and like that's your luck element. Otherwise, it's pretty much all up to you. Your win and your loss is all a fault of your own. And I'm still a firm believer in that. I still love those types of games where your win or your loss is your own. It feels the most rewarding to me rather than just random dumb luck. Especially because typically when it comes to games, I'm not a very lucky person. This breaks that mold entirely for me. But when I first started playing Final Girl, it was very hard for me to enjoy it because it ruined every conception I had about luck-based games. It just ruined my conception of the game overall because I kept dying, and of course, I kept blaming luck. And a lot of it came down to I wasn't playing the game as effectively as I should have been. I wasn't being the final girl that I was meant to be. And it really turned me off of the game. I had, I think, 3 boxes at the time, 3 feature films, And I played it a few times and was really frustrated by it because I couldn't win, and I was frustrated by the idea of not winning because, again, at the time I wanted to believe that my losses were my fault. And so I was frustrated enough with the game that I shelved it, and I didn't play it for probably a year and a half. And then I kept seeing more and more people talk about it, more people playing it, more people reviewing the newer games coming out. I kept seeing all the new ones coming out. And what ultimately ended up bringing me back into it was the Merrick Warehouse. And this is I think it was the Merrick Warehouse or the Merrick Files or something like that. Basically, they made a feature film that was based on Saw, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, horror franchise of all time. So when they made a box based around it, of course I had to at least try it. I had to give it a go. And while it was still tough and it was still very frustrating, playing it again after that year and a half and having played so many games in between, it finally made me realize that it's okay to lose. Like, it was a very humbling experience for me because I've always been super competitive, and losing consistently is really frustrating to me. I can take a loss here and there, but for me, losing all the time was so rough. But coming back into this and then, watching more people talk about Final Girl and playing all these other games, it humbled me a lot, and it made me realize that a game like Final Girl, you're gonna lose. You are going to lose probably at least 50% of your games. It is very tough for a lot of these feature films to be able to beat them. And of course, they do scale in difficulty. They don't say necessarily on the boxes, but if you watch people playing the different feature films, you can see kind of a scaling difficulty and complexity to these boxes that will make them easier or harder. And getting to that point where I realized that this is a game I'm going to lose and I'm going to have to accept that, it made a world of difference. Now I can play it and I can just enjoy it for the experience, for the story that it tells, and actually be able to immerse myself into feeling like I'm in one of these horror movies. The problem is I kept wanting it to be more like a Euro game. I wanted to have more control over it. I would roll my dice to try to walk, and it's like, well, why do I have to roll to see if I can successfully walk? Like, what's happening? And then I took time to think about it, and I'm like, well, if I fail a walk, maybe I wasn't watching where I was going, and I had my head turned around, and I tripped on a rock. And, of course, then that's going to make me either lose time trying to get myself back up, or if I can stumble into it, I might end up hurting myself a little bit, taking some damage, but still being able to keep moving. When I thought about what was happening in the game and applied it thematically, my enjoyment of the game just skyrocketed. And now it is arguably one of my favorite games of all time. One thing I will note here is that it is obviously a one-player only game. But I have actually had reports and had people tell me that you can do this co-op. And some people really like doing it. And it's more just like you have the same hand and you're operating the same Final Girl, but you're making the decisions together. And you're figuring out how to solve this problem together, which in a way could kind of thematically make sense. There's several movies where the Final Girl will have a voice in her head that's kind of telling her what's going on and what to do. And I appreciate that thematically as well. I personally don't know if I would ever play this co-op, but I've heard that it does work and people do have fun with it. So no judgment there. If that works for you, awesome. This is just a very thematic experience, and I definitely encourage people to try it out. If you're someone that likes playing games solo, I can't recommend this enough. Now, if the theme is not to your liking, if you're not a big horror fan, even if you don't just kind of slightly enjoy horror movies, if you're really against them, obviously I wouldn't recommend this. But if you have the slightest enjoyment with any sort of slasher or horror movies, kind of monster movies, I can't recommend this enough, because once you get over that hurdle, if you have it like I did, of trying to accept loss, once you can get over that and really dive into the experiences this game is trying to deliver to you, it is endlessly fun. And just like I mentioned earlier, doing the mixing and matching, there is insane amounts of longevity to this game. And the reason I wanted to make this review now is because Van Ryder Games, the publisher of this, just recently announced that they're no longer doing series. So how the Final Girl games used to work is they would launch a series of them. Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, and I think they just launched Series 4 was the last one. They're not doing those anymore. So usually those would come with 5 games, 5 feature films, and like a bunch of extra stuff. If you bought the entire series, you got a bunch of extra stuff. You could, of course, just go and buy the feature films individually. They're about $25-$30 a pop, so it's not too bad. And then your core box is about another $25. So really, it's about $60 just to get into the game to start. US dollars, of course, convert prices accordingly. It might vary on region. But now, from here on out, they're just going to release boxes one at a time, is what it sounds like, and just as they kind of feel like it's... To my knowledge and my understanding, there's no like set release dates for new boxes coming out. Of course, they're going to announce them as they come up. They're not just going to be like, oh, hey, here's a new game. I'm sure they're going to give a notice and be like, hey, this is when this feature film is going to be dropping. That makes it more accessible to people, and it also gives Van Ryder Games more of a chance to innovate, because I'm thinking they were starting to run out of ideas, and it was a little hard to try to make 5 games all at once and launch them all out at once. Now they can really just hone in on one at a time, get it knocked out, make it perfect, and then launch it out. And I really appreciate that. So that's why I'm doing this now, because that announcement was pretty recent here. I think it came with the Kickstarter for the Series 4 package. So just a little heads up there. And the other nice thing is that Final Girl is pretty readily available in a lot of places. I've seen several copies at my Barnes, like at my, well, most local Barnes & Noble that's about 2 hours away. It's a pretty small one, but they have it there. I've seen it at several local game shops. It is a very good and fulfilling single-player experience, or again, like 2-player co-op if you want to deliberate together on how to approach things. And there's just so much to it. And again, each experience is going to be completely unique. Even if I took this feature film and I played it back-to-back, I could change out my Final Girl. I'm going to have a different setup card. There's going to be different events and different items being revealed. There's so much variability in just a single box, and then you add on to that other boxes, and then you can mix and match between the boxes. Like, I can take the Final Girl out of this box, and then I can take the killer from Carnage at the Carnival, which is a puppet master. I can take him as my killer, and then I can go to a board game convention with that. So I have this Final Girl and that Puppet Master killer at a board game convention. I mean, what more do you need? On top of that, they not only have the feature film boxes, which typically feature just a single killer and maybe some minions, or in this case, 3 killers. They have what's called the vignette expansions, which are smaller kind of card boxes that are more of like a bigger problem. They have one for the birds. They have one called Terror from the Grave, which is zombies. Of course, I love that one, but I need to play it more. The last one that I knew about, like the last newest one that I knew about, was one that was based on Final Destination, where you're basically fighting death, and it's just kind of spreading tokens around this location and like causing problems, basically, and killing off victims. And those are really cool. They replace your killer. So you don't get a killer board or anything like that. You just get these, like, a set of tokens and cards and things like that to be able to play it. But, again, there's just so much versatility and so many things to dive into here. And what I really appreciate about it is that with the core system, and it being, you know, pretty much universal to each one of these feature films, and then the feature films just add on a few extra rules, if you wanted to, you really could just get the feature film boxes that appeal to you thematically. And that's pretty much what I've done. I got this one, I got the one for Alien, I got the one for The Thing, I got the Carnage at the Carnival, which I don't know which one that one's supposed to be based on. That might have just been an original thing, but it's a puppet master at a carnival going around and killing people. And then, like, the carnival has some traps and stuff. I think that one's really cool. That one I thought was just going to be fun thematically. What else do I have? I have the one for Saw. I have the zombie vignette. Let me actually double check my app here to make sure I remember which ones I have, because I'm brain farting right now. Oh, I also have the board game convention one that I mentioned. That one is, as far as I can tell, it's based on Scream. The killer is. But then, like, the killer also goes and disguises themselves as different killers from other feature films, which I think is really cool. I also have A Rotten Harvest, which the location is kind of based on Children of the Corn, and then, like, the killer is the Headless Horseman. I think so. It's something like that. He's got the jack-o'-lantern head, and it increases madness and things like that. It's a very cool-looking box. And then A Demon in the Shadows, which, as far as I can tell, is based on The Nun. I haven't watched any of those movies, so I'm not too sure on that, but that's what it seems like. And all of these I love thematically, and I have, as a result, ended up enjoying them mechanically. Again, normally when I get games, I get them for the mechanics of the game. This is one where, again, if you can enjoy the core system and you enjoy the theming of these games, you just, whenever you get a feature film, you just go for one that you enjoy. If it's based on a movie that you really like there's one for Friday the 13th, there's one for Nightmare on Elm Street. They've done a lot of classic slashers and also some more modern ones as well, which I think is really, really cool. I love their broadness for what they're trying to cover. I can't express enough that there is just so much within the Final Girl universe to explore. Now, I've been ranting and raving about things that I do like about this game, and I did have that little stint about things that I don't like, or at least that I didn't like getting into it. Now, to me, it's a nearly flawless game because I understand, I just want to enjoy the experience. Some of the things that I think might turn people away from this game, other than just the theme for people that aren't horror fans, that at first, setup can be a little tedious. That was another thing that kind of turned me off initially, is that setup was a little bit annoying. And it is one of those things that as you play it more, it actually just gets so much easier. You know exactly what you're doing, what goes where. Figuring it out that first few times, you're going to stumble on yourself a little bit. And that's perfectly okay. So it says 20 to 60 minutes to play it. Realistically, if you're playing for your first few games, you're probably going to be there for about 2 hours. Just in terms of getting everything set up, learning how to play it, and integrating all the little things and then tearing it down, it's going to take you a little while for those first couple of plays. I will be 100% honest. It's definitely one of those repeated plays. You will start to figure out a flow for the game from beginning to end, from setup to playing to teardown. You will get a flow for that whole experience, and then that 20 to 60 minutes is much, much more attainable. But getting there does take a little bit of work. The other thing I will mention is that for what seems like a fairly simple game, it's not a huge rulebook by any means, but there is a decent amount of intricacy to just the core rules. So not only do you have to learn this rulebook, you also have to learn the different rules for each feature film, which typically are actually not too bad. I will showcase that right now. Let me actually find one here, because that's not in the right spot. So this is for the feature film box, A Knock at the Door. Here is the sheet for the location. It has its own set of rules with a components list, and then special rules on the back for it. And then you get into the killers, which are called the intruders. Again, you got your component list up front, and then you get a little booklet that actually goes through how to play with these guys. So 4 pages here, 4 small pages here, and then 2 small pages here. Doesn't seem too bad, but again, it's just having to integrate that with this core book. On your first play, you have 3 different books that you have to reference. You have to remember, okay, this rule, does this apply to this booklet? Does it apply to this one? Where am I going to find that? And thankfully, at the back of the main rule book, there is an index here, so you can reference a lot of things. And if it's not in this index, it's probably in the feature film information. So it is handy, and everything in the rule book is well laid out and fairly easy to understand. But just to get into your first game, you're going to be going through 33 pages of rules. And again, it's not a huge rule book or anything. It's not the biggest deal. But there is a decent amount to learn. And there's also a decent amount of iconography, as you can see here on the icon summary list. You got to know what each of those means. Another thing I had a problem with at the beginning is when I was playing this one, I didn't realize that the basic killer action didn't make them move. So I was moving the killers every round and they weren't supposed to be, so it made the game get over a lot faster than it was supposed to, and of course I lost those games that I did that. But if I had just gone back here and realized hey, it doesn't have that foot symbol to tell me that the killer moves, so they're not going to move. I just kind of assumed it was there. So there's a lot of little details you have to pay attention to, and you're not going to know all of those right away. You're definitely going to be missing a lot of things because there's several moving parts going on. You'll also see here on the Final Girl player board, there is a step-by-step breakdown of how the turn goes. There were a lot of times I forgot that was there, and I would be missing several steps, say the upkeep phase, or the panic phase. I would be forgetting to panic the victims that needed to be panicked. Or sometimes in the killer phase, I'd forget to resolve a terror card, and then the rounds would get messed up. There's a lot of just little things that can be missed that might skew some of your earlier experiences. Even getting a feature film for the first time, you know, the first couple of plays, there might be a couple of rules unique to that feature film that you forget. Like I mentioned, that Demon in the Shadows one that I'm pretty sure is based on the Nun. The first couple times I played that, I actually missed a couple of rules in the feature film itself, and it did skew the game a decent little bit. So again, there's a lot to pay attention to, which is why I say your first couple of plays are probably going to take you about 2.5 hours from start to finish, so just have time set aside for that. Don't go in thinking you're going to get the game done in an hour. Even if you read the rulebook ahead of time thoroughly and even maybe take notes if you're that kind of person, even if you do that, you're probably still going to be referencing it quite a bit to make sure you understand how everything works fluidly. And again, repetition breeds success for something like this. It will get much easier to play as you go. But I would say that that does hinder a little bit. It's got a little bit of a learning curve. I have seen people mention, actually, actively in the community that, I think it's Camp Happy Trails. Yes, Camp Happy Trails is what people recommend to start the game because it doesn't really introduce any unique rules. It's just you're facing a killer in a location, and you're mostly just going off of the core rules. I'll throw that as, I haven't played that one, I will throw that out as a loose recommendation to do some research into that, but from what I've seen from dedicated Final Girl players that I know in the community, they're recommending that as like a starting round to see if this game is going to be for you. So I did mention earlier that when you get feature film boxes, you can just kind of pick what you want thematically. It is still nice to get one that is going to be as minimal as possible to start out with. And they did still mention that there's quite a bit of variability to it, and it's still very fun to play. So even once you get more into Final Girl as a whole, you can still come back and play that one and have a good time with it. Of course, you can always use the location with a different killer. You can throw the killer into different locations. It still just adds in more to the game, no matter which way you slice it. So definitely give that some consideration. But overall, how would I rate Final Girl on a 10 out of 10 scale? Now, this is way different than review formats I've done in the past. Normally, it's a bit more structured. I think this is probably the path I'm going to take going forward, where I just kind of give you the loose, let me rant for a little bit, and then I'll give you my final results at the end. And on a 10 out of 10 scale, I would give this a good 9. It's hard for me to say that it is actually perfect, even though I kind of said earlier that it is like near perfect for me. And it is very near perfect. I can almost stretch up to a 9.5. I do still have those moments where by the end of it, I'm a bit frustrated. Like the Demon of the Shadows playing 3 games back to back and just getting absolutely destroyed each game. It was a little frustrating, but again, it's that humbling experience of, it's okay, I don't have to win every game. It's just a story. Like, maybe in that game that I died in 3 rounds, I'm not the final girl. I'm one of the first victims to die. I mean, that could have been the story for that situation there. So it's all about being able to take it lighthearted, and for some people it's going to be a problem. And it is, again, hard to dedicate this as a 10 out of 10 game. And I know a lot of people are going to have a gripe with the fact that it is designed to be solo only, because there's so many people that see board games as a way to be social, and I can fully appreciate that. I totally understand it. I get you. I love having board games be a social event as well, but I also love having a solo board game that can take me away from screens for a while. And that's what this does. This takes the screen and puts it on my table, but in a way that's not going to hurt my eyes and actually make me think as well. It puts me into that situation rather than just letting me visually experience it. So having good solo games around is very important for me personally. But again, I understand if this is not everyone's cup of tea. Before you go get a copy of this, I definitely recommend you check out my how to play and my playthrough coming out. They should come out with this video. It's just going to be a lot of work to get them all done, but I definitely recommend you do research into these before you just go out and purchase them. That is always my tip, is that, you know, dive deep into something before you just go and grab a copy, which is probably why you're here watching this review. You want to know if this game is for you. So don't just hear how I feel about the game. Go watch the game be played and learn how to play it in its fullest. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10. Just ever so close to that perfect game, and it's definitely going to be in my top 20 from now on, at least for a good while until something really dethrones it. But I think that's enough ranting and raving for today. That is all I got for you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope to see you around. If not, of course, not everything has to be for you, and I totally don't mind if you don't stick around. But we will be, again, starting to review and do videos for other games. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys all in the next one. As always, this has been How Bored, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.